Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bear Down Ballers here on the Field of 68 Media Network. I'm Ryan Wall, joined by Jordan Pollock. And Jordan, the Arizona Wildcats upset the reigning and defending national champions, the Florida Gators, in the biggest matchup on opening night at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, a place where Arizona has had a lot of success, and it continues. 93-87, Arizona picks up the victory, and Koa Peat, the freshman, just put on a show. He dropped 30 points to go along with 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 11 for 18 from the field, and he's the first player since 2002, 2003 with 30 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 plus steals in their collegiate debut via CBS Sports Research. And he's the first Big 12 player to have 30 plus points, 5 plus rebounds, 5 plus assists as a freshman in their debut. So just all around unbelievable stuff. Before we get into all that, Jordan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I got a lot more than I felt like I was feeling going into this game. So let's jump in.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. And I just was breaking it down a little bit of what Arizona's star of the night, Koa Peat, did. But let's dive more deep into it because he's the guy that we need to start with because he was the best player on the floor for Arizona and in the entire game. Jaden Bradley was excellent, 27 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. We'll get into him later. But Koa Peat, this not only was one of the best debuts from a 5-star freshman in Arizona history, but one of the best debuts by a freshman in college basketball history. This guy was just spectacular. He did not look like a freshman from start to finish. He was just dominant down low, grabbing rebounds. He even was excelled as a playmaker, but his scoring ability and his touch was just it was just magical. What'd you think about Pete's performance, Jordan?
Definitely. He just outplayed, I think, every single, especially just kind of the narrative. Like I knew he was good, but just how well he played above those limits and above his 5-star rating. Like I don't care what the rating system is. Like your normal 5 star is not gonna show up on a court and play like that. He played absurdly. It just felt like once he got in a rhythm, there was no stopping him at all.
Yeah, and going into the season, we talked about it a couple days ago on our first episode. The 3 top freshmen that everyone was talking about was Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, and AJ DeBonsa. And although all 3 of those guys are excellent prospects, and I'm sure they're going to have great seasons, Koa Peat just inserted himself into that top 3 and made it a top 4. And everybody needs to be aware and be on the lookout for Koa Peat because this isn't just a one-off performance. I think he will. Do I think he's going to score 30 a game? No, but I think he's going to dominate this season for Arizona. And another thing from the start of this game and through the first half, it was evident that Koa Peat's Arizona's best player. And although Jaden Bradley did a lot of great things, Koa Peat was the engine that got Arizona back in this game when they were down by 12 points in the first half and leading them just throughout. I mean, this guy was 8 for 12 from the free throw line. He did a little bit of everything that you could want to see from a high level freshman. What do you, Jordan, when you put this in perspective of other top freshmen that we've seen at Arizona and even in the country in general, where do you kind of slot this debut for Pete?
I don't think we've seen anything like this at Arizona. I think looking at his skill, I think kind of what he does, I think really mirrored kind of what Aaron Gordon did, but a little bit on steroids, especially since it's the first game of the year against a top 4 team in the country. But he's just a maestro inside the paint. He's got a good touch. Even in I I don't really know if I would really consider it a mid range, but like his spot up jumper right outside of the restricted area, I was very impressed by, and I did not think that he had that much touch in his game. But
Yeah.
just the way he hit that shot and making the even the defenders kind of hesitate, which gave him more room even down low, is just spectacular. And the athleticism that he brings on the defensive end at 6'9" is just absurd.
Yeah, and two of the highlight plays in the second half, or two consecutive plays where Del Orso went up the right side, threw up the lob, and he slammed it down, a highlight dunk. And then the next possession, Pete ran the fast break and dunked it from a few feet out inside the paint. So yeah, his athleticism is evident, and it really just this guy just seems like he could do a little bit of everything. He is for his size, like you said, 6'9", a guy that can handle the ball like that, pass, score, and I don't even think we saw all of his his full bag of tricks tonight because I still think he showed that his jump shot is good, and I think he can kind of extend the range on that a little bit moving forward, and we didn't see a lot of that, but his touch was just spectacular. His post moves, he just moved like a veteran in there, and this is against a front court in Florida that people were already labeling the best in the country. And we saw that throughout the first couple of minutes. Florida really took it to Arizona with their big men, and they seemed like they had the advantage. But when Pete got going, they just couldn't stop him. And it was his finesse moves that were the difference in this one. The second guy for Arizona that stood out that I mentioned from the top was Jaden Bradley, and I'll say this as well. This was Jaden Bradley's best game as an Arizona Wildcat, and one of the best games I've seen from his Arizona point guard in a long time. He was just poised. He was under control more than I've seen him in the past, and in the first half, he was a little more passive, but when it got into crunch time in the second half, he was a willing scorer. He was driving into the paint, getting fouled, and he just made some crazy, crazy buckets down the stretch. What'd you think of Bradley's performance tonight, Jordan?
Yeah, I completely agree. And especially we're talking about how great the Florida front court is. They did get their share of blocks today. They made it tough on our front court. But just down the stretch, how well Bradley just seemed to easily get inside the paint, get high arcing layup shots over the outreach defenders and getting to the line. He hit a step back three right off of a screen, which was crazy. I think that was around the 4 minute mark. I can't remember the last
It
time I
was
saw
rule of two. It was rule of two, but it should have been
okay.
a three.
But I can't remember an Arizona guard that I remember just feeling through the game. It's like, okay, like he's not really doing a ton, but he's not doing nothing. Like he was kind of staying there. So to hear him even have over 20, it's kind of crazy because it didn't feel like until the last 6 minutes that he really did a ton scoring wise. So yeah, he played great down the stretch, easily his best game of his career.
Yeah, Pete and Bradley combining for 57 of Arizona's 93 points. I mean, when those two guys are connecting like that, it's frankly going to be hard for any team to keep up with those two teams. It's just that simple. Jaden Bradley, when you have a guy who is one of the best point guards in the country, whether people want to recognize it as that or not, he wasn't featured on a lot of, the preseason All American, top guard teams and all that. He wasn't on those lists, but he proved that when he's at his best, he is one of the best point guard in the country. And when you have a point guard of that level, when it gets to be a close game in the second half, you just have a newfound level of comfortability, which I had for Arizona when they were down the stretch, even though they did their best to blow this game as they were up by 8 points with a minute left, and it got down to three after a couple turnovers by Arizona. But I still, when the ball's in Jaden Bradley's hand, I just feel confident in Arizona. And Jordan, another kind of just overarching theme of this game was it was a sloppy game. Like if we're calling it down the middle, it was sloppy. Both teams combined for 29 turnovers, and they combined for 45 fouls together. 45 fouls. So that was just insane. Arizona had three guys with four fouls. Braden Berries fouled out. He only played 17 minutes in this one. What do you think about that? How sloppy this game was at times. All of the fouls between the two teams. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. I knew in the second half towards the end it kind of felt like it was every other possession was kind of stopping, but with how quick I thought from the jump and how high paced it was in the first 6 minutes, it that's really surprising. It felt like it was kind of going nonstop until that first. I don't even know if there was a stoppage until that first media timeout. But I think that's pretty expected this early into the season, especially a game that gets this much buzz on opening night, returning champions coming back, another team that kind of plays really fast. And so Florida, they could kind of range up and down depending on who they played. So I wasn't really surprised at the tempo, but the fouling does really surprise me.
Yeah, the tempo from the start of this game was just that both teams were running up and down the court very quickly, trading buckets back and forth before Florida took a 10 plus point lead. But another guy for Arizona that was the third best player for Arizona and surprised me that he was starting over Anthony Del Orso. That was Ivan Karchenkov, who we raved about in our first episode a couple days ago, based on his outings in the exhibition games, and he followed that up just with another terrific performance. Although he was, if you look at it, shooting wise, 3 for 9 from the field, he did all the little things: 12 points. 10 rebounds in this one, and he hit two three-pointers, and he hit Arizona's only two three-pointers in the whole game. Arizona was only 2 for 5 from three in this one. So that's very rare to make two three-pointers and win a basketball game, especially in this day and age. You're not going to see that every night. But Karchenkov was just from the very beginning, he's another guy that just didn't feel like a freshman. He didn't feel like he was overmatched. He made a couple big shots early, and his rebounding was just he brought a level of toughness that this group needed. He was fighting for every ball that was within reach. He even got, he got hit in the throat, he got hit in the stomach. The guy was getting beat up, but he kept bouncing back, getting to his feet, and fighting for this team. What'd you think of Karchenkov's performance tonight for Arizona?
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Plays like a veteran, and I think a lot of that comes from his experience of playing pro ball back in Germany a little bit. And yeah, I if you would have told me a week ago that U of A would have only shot in five threes, I would have said we'd probably get blown out in that game. So that's just a testament to especially Tommy Lloyd and kind of the style that he thinks is best for this team. And that's really good efficiency. 40% efficiency. You're going to win a lot of basketball games shooting 40% of your threes. And so if they're not really in a spot to take a ton of them, I know they put Florida kind of in that spot in the last few minutes where they're just kind of jacking up threes. But yeah, Karchenkov played lights out, I thought, and I think especially what he adds on the defensive end. He's kind of a tweener guy. He's not. I think he's around 6'6", 6'7".
Hmm.
So he's a tweener right in the 3 to 4 range. He plays bigger than probably his position should be, but he's not probably not as athletic to guard a two. And so I thought he brought a lot and he brings a lot. And I was actively surprised as you that they started him over Del Orso. But I think that's from what I saw today, I completely understand the change in the starting lineup.
Yeah, so you mentioned Del Orso. He finished with 8 points. Toby Awaka had 7, and Krivas had 6. Those were the next three top scores for Arizona. Del Orso had, he started a little slow, but he had some bright moments. Finished, like I said, with 8 points, but he had 4 rebounds. He had 2 assists. He had 2 steals and a block. He did a little bit of everything. I thought he added a lot to Arizona in this one. A guy that didn't have the best debut, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from his 5-star teammate in Pete. That is Braden Berries, who, like I said, fouled out. He played 17 minutes, only 3 points, 2 assists, 1 for 6 from the field. What'd you think of his debut?
I thought with the way they were kind of uh almost sheltering some of the guys and how heavy of foul calls, I think he definitely got spooked a little bit. I think especially on the defensive end, an athletic guard like him, he tried to make a few extra plays than he probably should have, which got him in the foul trouble. But I hope that doesn't dampen his, I think, ability to want to try to create offense on the defensive end.
Yeah, I don't think he had a good game by any means, but I think he showed his athletic ability that will translate throughout the season. And just because Koa Peat had, looked like a 4 or 5 year player out there, a veteran, doesn't mean every freshman, every 18-year-old will look like that. And I really think, Barry's picked up those first two fouls in the first 5 minutes of the game, and that kind of hindered his success
Yep.
throughout the game because then he played sparingly throughout. He didn't get, he didn't have that big of a leash, so it's hard to play like that. So I by no doubt I think he'll bounce back this week in their next matchup and in the future. I think he's still going to be a big part of this team's success, and for them to win and beat a team like Florida without Berries, who we both think is going to be, a top scorer and contributor to this team, that just kind of proves how well Arizona did. Jordan, did anyone else from Arizona's side of things kind of stick out to you, on the, maybe it was positive, maybe it was negative. Any other things that you saw from Arizona in this one?
I would say overall schematically, I want to give a lot of like props to Florida. It felt like in that I think it was the 14 to like 10-minute range when they got that 10-point lead in the first half. It kind of felt like they were just really, I think, making Arizona get to every single switch and to every single defensive transition point, and where they would just get it all the way down to within 5 seconds, and they'd get an open guy at the lane, or they'd get an open shooter. And so I was really impressed. I thought with offensively they would wait and wait and wait until they got a shot that they want. And I think that one thing, Arizona, it took them a little bit of time to get into the game defensively and to get into the right spots and the right rotations. But I think once Arizona, I think, got a lot better feel for the game, and okay, like we're gonna have to force some tough jumpers, and we may have to play defense for a full 30 seconds. And I think that was one of the bigger things that I noticed, especially in that range when Florida did where it was able to get the lead.
Yeah, Florida finished this game with four players scoring in double figures. They were led by Thomas Hall's 27 points. He was excellent in this one. And Xavier Lee had 14 for them. He was 3 for 11 from deep. And as a team, Florida struggled from deep. They made four quick 3 pointers in the first half, but only finished 7 for 27 from 3 point range, and that was a kind of a big part to their kind of fall there in the second half to me. But overall, I mean, this game felt like it had that big game feel. And for a game on opening night to feel like a game that could have been a Sweet 16 or an Elite Eight game, that's just as telling as it gets. This is great for the sport. It was great to see two of the best college basketball programs go face to face on opening night, and I just hope more of this happens. And Jordan, I really think, before this season started, you had Arizona finishing and going to the Sweet 16. I had them going to the Elite Eight, but I think the narrative and the questions surrounding this team are going to start to become: can this team in Arizona make a Final Four run? Because they showed tonight that they have all the pieces when they're playing at their best. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's still a little early to say that fully, especially thinking about what Florida lost in their big closer when he went to the NBA. And really first game of the year, we're not really sure how Florida's going to look, and we're not really sure how Arizona's going to look a little bit later into the season. So
Hmm.
I I think I'm reluctant to say I'm still holding off on anything further than a second weekend appearance for the tournament. And another part of that, it's just one of the hardest tournaments in all of sports to get through.
Mhm.
And so I think one game they looked amazing, but I'm not going to use one game because especially Arizona the last few years they've had really high highs, but then they've had really low lows, and the consistency that's where your final four teams are made and bred is
Yeah.
what they can do night in and night out consistently. And so we got the night in. What's the night out going to look like? And so that's where I think putting my flowers right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not saying I'm not that wasn't I'm not
You're good.
predicting I'm
Yeah.
not predicting Arizona to go to the Final Four after just one game, but also when you beat the number 3 best team in the country and you beat the defending national champions, I said in our first show that they're not the same team as they were last year. They're not as talented as they were last year, and frankly they shouldn't have been ranked number 3. And should Arizona have been? I don't know. Like you just said, things have to play out, but still, that doesn't take away from this win. And I said this before we started recording. I think this at the very least, it's a top 3 win for Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, and I think you could argue that this is Tommy Lloyd's best win in his 4+ years and entering his 5th year at Arizona. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think again that's something that time will show. If Florida goes on to finish eighth in the SEC, that could look very differently. If Florida goes on to win the SEC, then I'm super eager. But it's something that you kind of just got to wait and see. I think when you play it up historically, you gave me the figure the other day. Was it Tommy Lloyd was 11-1
Yep,
in Las Vegas?
now 12-1 at the T-Mobile Arena.
Now 12-1. So that's a little different. The closest thing I compared it was when Caleb Love's first year with Arizona when they went into Duke and won. I think the context around that is like the complete opposite of the context around this, to where it's like you're going into a real one of the most literally the most challenging place to play in college basketball compared to a place that is nicknamed your home arena just north of it.
Yep.
So with those things at play, I think it's still I'm a wait and see kind of guy, especially the first day of college basketball season.
Yeah, the one thing is for sure is Arizona entered the season ranked number 13, and we could both agree they're going to find their way inside the top 5 next Monday when the new AP polls released, and they even potentially could enter or could move even further to the top 3. So, or just based off one win, and that's because, like I said, and I'll restate it, Arizona beat the defending national champions, the Florida Gators, 93-87. And a thing that's unlikely for Arizona is they only have 3 days rest as they're playing their next game on Friday night at McCall Center in Tucson. They're hosting Utah Tech, who are coming off of a season where they only won 7 games. They lost their top 2 scorers, and Arizona is going to be a massive favorite in this one. And this should be a traditional Arizona facing a lower opponent at home. Just a traditional beatdown. So you think it'll be a beatdown as well?
I agree. I think it will be a beat down, a little bit lower highs of the high stakes game that we got tonight, but I think Arizona will be able to pull it out maybe at the end.
Yeah, so Arizona has 2 games. Utah Tech on Friday, November 7th, Northern Arizona on November 11th before they face 2 more ranked teams. They're playing Utah Tech November 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. local time. That game will also be on TNT, so another national TV game for Arizona. Jordan, before we go today, do you have any other final thoughts on Arizona versus Florida or any other maybe bigger picture stuff?
I want to point out, and you kind of roughly talked about, I think the ending of the game and how that just started really bad and could have gotten to significantly worse. I want to give a shout out to Tommy Lloyd and how he was able when they got when they were able to get a timeout in, he was able to get plays to where guys could get open to come back for the inbound. And so I thought Tommy did a great job of being able to end that game and seal it and especially putting some of the better free throw shooters at the line with Del Orso and even Koa Peat. I know he missed that first one, but he made the three after that when it really counted most. So great job by Tommy Lloyd and just the style and how different it is this year compared to pretty much the last 2 years with how much different their roster is and just coaching down the stretch, how great of a job he did.
Yeah, this team, as we talked about at length a couple of days ago on our first episode, Arizona has a lot of new faces, but they do have a couple key guys that returned with Jaden Bradley, with Mo Krivas, with Toby Awaka, with Anthony Del Orso. So that helps a lot when you're in close games. But overall, an excellent win by Arizona, a 6 point victory over the 2024-25 national champion Florida. And this game will be remembered as a game that we saw one of the greatest debuts by a college basketball freshman, and that was Koa Peat, who just put on an absolute show. He scored 30 points with 7 rebounds, and Jaden Bradley also had 27 himself. So just some unbelievable stuff. I can't wait for Arizona to continue their season, and when we see them face a couple top ranked opponents later this month. But that's all we have time for today. He's Jordan Pollock. I'm Ryan Wall.